Good morning, everybody. Man, it's cold out here this morning. That's why I got my coat on. But hey, we have to be prepared because it is November the 2nd, and it's also Testy Tuesday. Hey, and it's time to get out and vote as well. All right, if you haven't already done so, our Old Testament passage for this coming Sunday focuses in on death and life. Yes, death and life. And it's all part of our All Saints worship service. It comes from the 25th chapter of Isaiah, verses 6 through the first part of 10. But I'm not going to get to that yet because I'm going to ask you a question, because it is Testy Tuesday, regarding these passages. In the passage, God prepares for us this awesome feast. What are two of the main ingredients in that feast? All right, I'm going to give you three choices. The first one is rich food filled with marrow and well-aged wines. The second choice is the choicest chops of lamb with fresh horseradish and wine. The third choice is pizza, wings, and beer. What? You don't like that last choice? That would be my choice. All right. Rich food filled with marrow and well-aged wines. The choicest lamb chops with fresh horseradish and wine. Or pizza, wing, and beers. Beers? Yeah, beers. You know, craft beers. The answer is the first one. Rich food filled with marrow. You can just see roast beef coming out and the bone is still in there and the fat is just dripping out. And well-aged wines. This is what God is going to do for us. See, this whole passage is set in the context of a lot of bad stuff that's happening and about to happen to Israel. Well, let me read it. Let me read this text. On this mountain, the Lord of hosts will make for all peoples a feast of rich food, a feast of well-aged wines, of rich food filled with marrow, of well-aged wine strained clear. And he will destroy in this mountain the shroud that is cast over all peoples, the sheet that is spread over all nations. He will swallow up death forever. Then the Lord God will wipe away the tears from all faces, and the disgrace of his people he will take away from the earth, for the Lord has spoken. It will be said on that day, Lo, this is our God. We have waited for him so that he might save us. This is the Lord for whom we have waited. Let us be glad and rejoice in his salvation, for the hand of the Lord will rest on this mountain. Beautiful passage, and if you've come to any of the funeral services that I conduct, this is one of the passages that I usually read because of its power, its immense power that it has for you and for me, and its promise that it has for you and for me. There's a couple of things here in this passage, as I was beginning to say, falls in the midst of a lot of bad stuff, words of judgment that the prophet has for the people, not only for the people of Israel and Judah, but also for the surrounding nations as well. So you have all these words of judgment, and it's also the words of bad news, but then these words of hope, wonderful words of hope. It's just two things I like to point out that are kind of cool about it. And that first part, of rich foods, a feast of well-aged wines, of rich food filled with marrow, well-aged wines, strained clear. Now, that's pretty ritzy stuff for the people of that day. Not everybody was able to eat all those things, and if you did, normally it was maybe at somebody's wedding, and that's it, because you just couldn't afford all that. However, in the Hebrew, it's very sing-song. It's like a poem, one of those tunes that you hear on the radio that stick in your mind for the next 3 days. That's what this is in the Hebrew. So it would be kind of something to hang on to in the midst of terrible times. Words of promise, words of hope. But then the part here about God swallowing up death forever, you think that's kind of a weird way to put it. Well, it wasn't for the people back then because they lived in the midst of people who lived in the surrounding hillsides who weren't Hebrews. They worshiped other gods. One of the gods that they worshiped was the god of death. And what did the god of death do? He didn't go around with a sickle and cut people down. No, he went around swallowing up people. That's how death came to visit you. It swallowed you up. But what's happening here? Yahweh is the one coming along, and he's swallowing up the swallower. Isn't that awesome? And even the Apostle Paul, when you get into 1 Corinthians 15, uses that same image. Death is swallowed up for good, he says. So, you know what? It's okay to draw on images that are out there in the world to make them pertinent and real to you as the people. That's what the prophet Isaiah did here. We find that all through the Hebrew scriptures as well as our New Testament scriptures as well. These are definite words of hope. But remember, they're spoken in the context in which hope seems to have evaporated. That this is the end. There is nothing for us. That's not what Yahweh, that's not what God says. God is the Lord of all. Because when this is finally fulfilled, the Lord God will wipe away tears from all faces. What a promise for you and for me. Blessings be with you on this day. Stay warm, and let's get all prepared and ready for that great final feast day with all of our loved ones. Blessings be with you.